Welcome back to Careers at the End of the World. I am your host, Jenn Walker Wall, and I'm here today to talk about something very, very important, okay? And that is my favorite job search strategy. And it's the job search strategy that I think makes the most sense based on how I suspect 2025 is going to go for most people. If you're new here, welcome. Careers at the End of the World is where I share career insights and strategies that is reflective of the world we're living in, your values, and how to make progress and move your career forward in the midst of all of it, okay? And I think we can all agree 2025 is going to be a chaotic year. It's already a chaotic year, and we're only a few days into it as of the time that I'm recording this. And I was trying to think at the end of last year, because I have like 50, almost 50 episodes of this podcast, not quite 50, I think. But I've talked about a lot of job search tactics, okay? I've given a lot of advice that I actually think still holds up. I'm thinking about all the old episodes and seeing if that's true. I think it still holds up. I think a lot of what I was doing 10 years ago and 5 years ago actually still works for people. But there's a piece of the puzzle here that I've been discussing implicitly, and I want to discuss it directly today. Okay, and that is the passive job search strategy. If you have listened to this podcast or you've come to my webinars, you know that I am not in the business of making predictions about where the job market is going to go. I don't think it would be helpful for me to speculate on that. I don't think that's within the scope of practice for what I actually do. And I could guess, but that would be all I would be doing is guessing. And so what I feel really confident about, and I think is probably fairly obvious, is that A, the job market's super competitive right now. B, I think there's a lot of uncertainty and chaos yet to come. And I think there'll be opportunities. That's C. I really do. If there's one thing I've learned as a somewhat catastrophic thinker, I think the last few years have been a little bit of a case study in it's not all bad all the time. I was listening to a TikTok on the drones situation in the New Jersey area. And I was reading the comments on the video that were very much in the realm of are the aliens coming? And if they come, do I still have to go to work and pay my bills? And it was funny because I think we've just worked through so much chaos in the last few years that going to work some days really feels quite silly, I think, for a lot of us. But also it was funny because someone responded to that comment who was like a CPA and was like, I really recommend paying your taxes. The IRS is going to get their cut one way or the other. And that made me giggle because that's how I feel as a career coach. I don't know what's going to happen, but I do know that we're going to have to go to work through it. That's how I feel. And so this is a strategy that I think is going to help us get there and maintain as much sanity as possible in the meantime. So my favorite job search strategy is what I refer to as a passive job search. I want to compare it and I want to put it on a spectrum, if you will, with an active job search. I would describe an active job search or an active job seeker as someone who is ready for their next move. They're probably sick of the job that they're in. Maybe they're between jobs. They're listening to a podcast like this and they're doing what I say. They're not taking it as inspiration. They're not saving it for someday. They're like, oh, Jen is saying apply to X amount of jobs. I'm applying to X amount of jobs. She's saying to tailor her resume. I'm going to tailor her resume. And they're doing that day after day, week after week, month after month, actively to generate something as quickly as possible. Or I shouldn't say, I'm saying as quickly as possible. I don't mean out of desperation, but I mean we're ready. We're ready for what's next. Now, a passive job search often looks very similar, okay? But the volume of the activity is pared back. And oftentimes this is the right approach for people who like their job, but want to be ready to consider what's next. I see this a lot at a fairly senior executive level where there's one of each of these jobs at each organization or something like that. It kind of has to be passive. There's not 4 to 8 CEO jobs posted a month for those kind of clients, for example. You need to kind of, do a lot of work in a different way. And it looks different. It's a little bit more passive. Waiting and the slowness is a little bit more intentional as a passive job seeker. I also see this work for people who are very, very busy and don't have the capacity for whatever reason, personal, professional, to be applying for the volume of jobs that's required for most active job seekers. Okay. If I were to job search, I would consider myself a passive job seeker. And not just because this is my favorite strategy, but because I have a lot of years of experience under my belt. I'm currently self-employed and I have been for the last few years. So I'm not going to fit neatly into a huge volume of roles. I'm going to be a puzzle piece. And my job as a job seeker is to really find the puzzle where I belong, which is not going to be just any puzzle or organization, right? There'll be a lower volume of jobs that I'm really well qualified for. So I put them on a spectrum because they're very similar, and quite frankly, they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. I mean, active job seekers sometimes have weeks and months where it looks more passive because of, whatever, for a variety of reasons that are all legitimate and valid. And sometimes passive job seekers have an opportunity to amp up, again, for all kinds of reasons. But there's a reason that I'm suggesting that most people think about themselves as passive job seekers right now. And that's because the volume of jobs is not what we're used to. It's not what many people are used to. And it's because of you. The people that I work with, they're not usually people with 3 to 5 years of experience, open to anything, trying to get their foot in the door. No, they're more experienced than that. They have skin in the game. They've worked places. They may have jobs currently that they're not just willing to walk away from and give up for any opportunity. And the same can go for people who are currently self-employed or currently between work. They're not necessarily going to just take the first thing that comes along because it comes along. They're looking for roles that make sense for them. And there's exceptions to this, for sure. But I think the vast majority of people, even if they wanted to be active job seekers, would find themselves with a job search that looked passive because the volume of jobs is just not there. I know there's folks listening who are like, I don't want to be a passive job seeker. I want to be an active job seeker. I want to land a job and put this period in my rear view mirror. And I totally get that. And it is probably not going to change how I think about this potentially for you either. So hear me out on this. The benefit of thinking of yourself as a passive job seeker, even if you'd rather be an active one, is that you are going to have to think and act like a passive job seeker would. So when I have someone who's a great fit for that, who's willing to do that, who's relieved that option exists, because I often have to let people know that option exists because the active job seeker model is the only one that many of us have. What it means is we really have to take advantage of each of those opportunities. So whether it's a conversation or a job posting, if those are going to be potentially valuable to us, then we really have to treat them as such. And what can often happen with active job seekers, especially when people are stressed, panicking, there are not that many high quality aligned jobs available, is that people are over applying to jobs. They're applying to jobs with a wing and a prayer. And that always happens to some degree, but it's really happening right now. And I think it's because so many people are in fact between jobs that they have more capacity to hit submit. There's also all of these tools now that make it really easy and fast to just hit submit on an application. But if we think about ourselves as a passive job seeker, then we're not going to think about applying for 100 jobs a month or even dozens of jobs a month necessarily. We're going to find a few quality opportunities that make sense for us, that we are well suited for, well qualified for. And we're going to take the time to make a really strong case for ourselves. And I'm thinking about your resume and your cover letter here, but this could be a conversation. It could be preparing for an interview. We're really tuning in and making time for fewer opportunities that are probably better for us. Now, you've heard me say things like this in my webinars. You've heard me say things like this in the podcast, but I really just want to introduce the term passive job search here compared to an active job search, because I've had a lot of clients this year who can't find 10 jobs to apply for a month that really truly make sense for them, that meet their needs and priorities. And so what do we do with that time? What do we do with that energy? What do we do with these goals if the job postings just don't exist? And the answer, I don't think, is nothing. We have to recalibrate. We have to think differently. So when 1 or 2 jobs are posted instead, we can't treat them like we'd treat 1 out of 100. And the value in that is that you can put forward a much stronger application. You can put forward more energy and do the work that you need. I don't want to say need to, but you can channel your energy more directly and efficiently. And if we're thinking like passive job seekers, we're not playing strictly a numbers game. People get jobs through passive job searches all the time. And right now, it makes sense for many people to be thinking about themselves as passive job seekers. There's not a ton of jobs. There's fewer jobs than usual. So are we going to play a numbers game when the numbers are lower, or are we going to play a quality and alignment game? I know which game I would want to play if I were an applicant right now. I know which game I want my clients to play. So I want you to really thinking about yourself differently, even if you are like 100% committed to your job search. To me, the passive job search and the active job search difference is not your intention to land a job. It's how you design the strategy that gets you there. And while for most of the 10 years that I've had this job, passive job seekers have fit into a couple of unique categories and been the minority in a competitive market. And quite frankly, like as my clients get older, as we get older together, like it makes sense for us to think about ourselves as applicants and candidates differently. We're no longer trying to get a job. We're trying to get a specific kind of job, one that meets our financial needs, one that provides the right kind of benefits, one that allows us to do the right kind of work in the right kind of way. By really honing in here, I think we might be doing ourselves a greater service than by strictly trying to play a numbers game. Who is this the right approach for, and or when is it the right approach? So there's like a person I have in mind, but there's also like a timing and context piece that I have in mind here. If you are currently an active job seeker and you are finding plenty of jobs that you are well qualified for and happy to apply for and would consider yourself, based on what you know now, happy to potentially accept, assuming you see and hear good things in the process, then this might not be necessary for you. There are industries that aren't as deeply impacted as others. That's the truth. Okay. If you're finding plenty of jobs, if what you're doing is working, if you're landing interviews, don't listen to me. Don't cut back. This isn't for you. That's important. But if you are someone who is really busy, if you're someone who likes your job and you're not in a rush, or even if you're sort of conflicted about whether you should leave or not, I think that a passive job search approach is a good one. And if you are someone who would like to be a very active job seeker and you'd love there to be like dozens of jobs each week for you to choose from, but you're just not finding that that's the case, I want you to consider the passive job search approach for your job search, or at the very least for those slower periods in your job search. Now, what is the difference in preparing for a passive job search versus an active job search? Almost nothing. Okay, there's almost no difference. When a client comes to me and we decide that a passive job search approach is right for them, we do pretty much everything a quote unquote active job seeker is going to do. Okay, we make sure that the assets are in a very good place. Okay, so we have target jobs, we have a resume or resume templates. I teach our clients, whether they're passive or active, how to tailor these documents so that they really stand out. They have a cover letter, they have an updated LinkedIn profile. That all remains very important wherever you find yourself on the spectrum. But it's also a place where we maybe spend a little bit more time on the networking piece, on the relationship piece, on that tapping into your professional ecosystem. Because a lot of times for a lot of people, if you give yourself a long enough runway, like that is a great channel. The people you know, the people you could know are great ways to find out about opportunities and be put forward for opportunities. So there really isn't a huge difference in how we prepare. The difference is in how it's executed, whether it's consistent and like a daily or weekly habit, or whether it's something that maybe looks a much lower volume, much slower. It's possible that it could take longer, but it's actually possible at this point that it could take longer either way. So what I really think makes the most sense is to prepare for a job search, even if you're not in a hurry. That's been a constant thread in any sort of advice that I have given in the last decade, because I can tell you that rushed, stressed out people have the longest job searches. There's just no two ways about it. And that was true 10 years ago. It was true 5 years ago. It's true now. It adds a layer of stress that makes it really difficult to execute. So that's not a judgment. It's just a reality that being in desperate need of a job makes it feel 10 times longer to get one. And when you're searching from a place of fit, the search sort of changes. You are more discerning, I think, in terms of like what you're actually selecting and how you're putting yourself forward. So regardless of how active of a job seeker you think you're going to be in 2025, you should make sure that the basics are in a really, really good place. In fact, if you're listening to this and you have no intention of being a job seeker in 2025, I think this is still good advice. I don't know why you'd be listening to this if you have no intention of landing a new job. Thank you for the download and the support. I think most people listening to me are somewhere on this job search spectrum, but I really want you to think about like, what do you need to do so that if you decide to make a move, or if you need to make a move, you are in the best possible place to do it. And you have some options. You have different ways to structure your search to accommodate your needs, your goals, the circumstances, whatever it might be. Probably some combination of those, to be honest. If this is the first episode you've happened to stumble upon, I want you to know that there are quite a few episodes that are much more tactical when it comes to executing your job search. So I'm going to link to some of those in the show notes so you can check those out. I've talked about resumes. I've talked about developing a professional ecosystem. Like I've talked about negotiating like everything. I've talked about it. I don't think there's a corner of the job search process that I haven't yet discussed. So this is at a high level where I think a lot of people who intend to job search or find themselves job searching should really consider in the year ahead. And if I see the market change drastically and going back and being active, you'll probably know, but I'll let you know that that's working, and the passive job search process can really go back to the people who need it rather than the circumstances that demand it. But it's okay to be a passive job seeker. It doesn't mean that your job search will go slower. People's searches are going quite slow right now. There are many rounds of interviews. There are many applicants. There are not that many recruiters available to help manage this kind of work. So yeah, things are up and down and taking longer than we want them to. So a passive job search in some ways just matches the speed at which things are unfolding in that process. Now, if you think you might want some help getting ready for your job search, whatever that might look like for you, or if you need help figuring out what that should look like for you, our job search community is enrolling a winter cohort. It's cold, it's dark, you're probably not going to go to the beach, okay? So come and work on your assets, your strategy, identify your target roles, put the pieces in place so that you know what you need to do and you're prepared when it comes time to start your job search. And for those of you who have been struggling and not getting traction, and you're ready for some insight and strategy and support to change things up, you should definitely come and join us as well. Okay, so I'm going to drop the links. If you register early, because we don't kick off until February, but if you register early, you get to join us early at no additional cost. So you could get a couple extra weeks for free just by registering early. And we'd love to have you. It's a lovely group of folks. We celebrate wins. We commiserate over challenges. We figure things out. We keep things moving. And that's what you need to be successful in this job market. Thank you so much for listening. Check out the show notes for more resources. And if you're interested in joining us, we'd love to have you. And stay tuned. We've got some more episodes coming out this month that I'm really, really excited about that I think are going to be really helpful. So make sure you tune in next week too. I'll talk to you then.